Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to transition like the pros, specifically how to gain speed and distance and hit your drives a lot farther. Now you're going to see here with me in today's video is my buddy Josh Koch. Josh is one of the top long drivers in the world, as well as an awesome golf coach based out of Orlando, Florida. We'll put all the info for Josh in the description down below. You can see his website at hitbombs.com, see him on YouTube at hitbombs, and on Instagram at Josh Koch Golf. All right, Josh, so let's talk about how to transition to hit the driver, all clubs, but let's say driver longer. Now in our first video, we went over how to start the swing. We'll say how to start it till about halfway back, takeaway, things like that. And then the next piece is, what do we do from the takeaway to the top and as we start the downswing?
Yeah, good question. And as we alluded to in that first video, we do not want to get moving to the right and then continue to kind of move to the right, because that would create a lot of low point issues, swing direction issues, angle of attack issues, to where we're hitting too far out or too far up. Yeah. So from about halfway up to the top, what's happening is as we're turning, we're creating left lateral bend and extension to kind of keep this pivot somewhat on top of the lower body. Okay, yep. So like I said, we don't want to get to the top looking like this. We also don't want to get to the top looking like this. We kind of want somewhere in between. Yep. And the beauty of that is once we're here and that starts to happen, that actually starts to initiate the shift back towards the target. So one of the biggest questions I get is, and it was actually one of the biggest issues, or one of the biggest questions I had in my personal development was, when I get to the top of my swing, should I slide or should I open? Now, a lot of people will say you do a combination of both. And the issue I had with that was there wasn't enough time. Okay, so how, knowing that, I have to get momentum moving back towards the target somehow, how do I combine the two together? And what I kind of stumbled upon was the idea that once we're at waist high, we wind up to allow this right hip to get back behind us. As we're doing that, the body's starting to extend, and that combination is starting to move the mass forward to where then the body actually starts to fall left, okay, which is what we also like to call the counterfall. Mm-hmm. So the idea is you're using the pivot to actually wind yourself up and create an imbalance to where you start to fall left, therefore taking care of the forward shift. Yeah. What this does is this allows me to then solely emphasize rotation in a downswing. So not saying that the pressure isn't forward, because it does have to get forward. How I'm doing it and how I'm sensing it is happening very dynamically through the backswing and the momentum of how I'm winding up.
Yeah, I love that. So I think let's talk, that doesn't require any further clarification. And let's talk feels, right? Yep. And then we'll kind of dig into the drill piece. And it'll be easy to see, guys, when you watch Josh hit balls, him doing these moves and the speed, the dynamics, and the ball striking ability that provides without him having to consciously think about all that stuff. So it sort of stacks those later elements in and of themselves. Let's start from the beginning just for a second. Okay. And let's say we take our setup position, Josh. Okay. And just to reiterate, in case a couple people missed it, just like a 10-second little getting the club started. Okay. Right.
So first, waggle, and then once the club goes down, I'm using my core to kind of throw this head or sweep this head back wide and away. Yeah. Like I said, I'm trying to kind of sweep it away from the target.
Love that.
And then from there, I'm feeling like my core and my right oblique, instead of kind of throwing away from the target, it feels like it's going back and around, almost like it's kind of orbiting around, back, up and away that way. Okay. Behind me.
And so when you're doing, let's get to the takeaway piece just for a sec.
Yep.
So if we go from there, and then from there, let's do kind of start that counterfall up to the top. So the opposite of that, if I were to do the bad version, that would be, so the obliques not going up and back, down and to the right. Right. Shorter swing length, chest, shirt buttons down. Right. And the two key pieces you mentioned when you started were the left lateral bend, so lead shoulder working more down, and then the extension pieces. Right. The extension for someone simple would be like shirt buttons more up towards the sky.
Yeah, quite simply, it's basically standing up, right,
Yeah.
is extension. So exactly, the higher the chest gets,
Yeah.
the more extension you're creating.
And that we could do another video on, because I think that in and of itself is something people like don't really comprehend that can help a lot. But let's say someone wants to start doing this. They say, okay, I kind of get the general idea. If I'm getting the club kind of thrown away this way, I'm being a little bit more dynamic. I'm countering myself, getting rid of the weight shift part earlier,
Right.
so I can just do kind of the pure rotation part after that as a reaction. Drills, right, to start with this, if I wanted to do some feel things. Let's take a break for a second, then we'll talk a couple drills.
Okay.
All right, Josh, so let's talk through this drill progression. I'm gonna switch you with a bucket
Okay.
here. And this is another progression I saw off your Instagram. And I really like the way that you put it together as like a two-step process. And I think it's such an easy to follow thing someone could train in at home, course, whatever. Again, we had to think the med ball originally,
Right.
but we're gonna just use a bucket
Yeah,
for simplicity.
Works perfect.
So for those who are watching, the first step of it, let's talk through that, and then the second step for them to feel the counterbalance and or the counterfall transition pieces.
Sure. Yeah. So if we imagine there's a wall behind us, that's usually the best way to do it, and we have this bucket. Ideally, we want to kind of get it swinging and then use the momentum to then throw that bucket kind of away. So what that does is that helps correlate the idea that we're swinging this club head back, okay?
Yeah.
So the opposite of that would be to try to like throw it up too quickly. So we're making sure we're kind of getting that swinging motion. This is keeping our body in the correct rates of flexion to extension. So it's not getting us into extension too quickly. The reason this is important is that allows you to actually wind up your core and your obliques a lot more efficiently.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I do it that way. Is it's like, all right, first half of the backswing, we're throwing it back in a way that way.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, if we continue that into the second part of the backswing and it continues to be thrown too far to the right, then we got some issues. So
Yeah.
we got to kind of blend the second half of the backswing in a little bit of a different way. But like I said, it all goes back to just making sure you're turning correctly. And if you do that, this will happen in the correct.
And I want to pause on that, Josh. I'm going to interrupt you. I think that's such an important point too, because I think a lot of people will take the bucket and they're going to go back like this,
Right.
right? And it's like, hey, they feel like they just go this way.
Right.
The lack of using their core to turn or feeling that being their main priority. And if you had a ball there, and correct me if I'm wrong, and there was a wall back there, you'd put a little force into that thing, correct?
Especially if there was a little bit of weight to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, you have to. You have to.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the things that I do. Given that someone's using the right core infrastructure,
Yep.
I actually try to have them do it harder. So this isn't a slow thing. Like, we want to use our core to throw this thing back faster, because then we can create more movement through the midsection.
Exactly. And so, and I chopped you off there, but you were saying once I go from there, right, it doesn't go that way forever, then eventually there's a
Right.
second part to it.
Right. So the second half is kind of like, once we get to waist high, now we're going to feel like the pivot continues to wind us up and launch that bucket now over our shoulder behind us, okay? Now, if you do it correctly, it's going to it should move kind of diagonally at 45 degrees away from me in that direction.
Okay.
So a lot of times what I see with people who do kind of jump into this too quickly is, one thing they'll do is they'll pick it up and kind of skip the rates of the first half of the backswing. And then the second thing is they'll kind of launch it and just use their arms and kind of launch it back into that direction. So what I found is, if you kind of see it moving back in that direction, you know that you're probably using your core and the rotations happening.
I didn't think about that
Yeah.
little caveat. So, and I think that covers the drill perspective, and either we'll put it up or you guys can go check out Josh's Instagram too. I think the visual of you, I think maybe you're in your garage with the wall,
Yes.
and quite literally seeing him throw the ball into the wall, both behind him and then on this side, really creates an easy visual, and I think such a simple way to feel and answer a lot of the questions of what am I supposed to feel when I do this. Because Josh and I could talk all day, shirt buttons here, left shoulder here, right hip here, but when you throw the ball, I think it's very, very simple
Right.
to kind of self-discover a lot of those pieces.
Right, and that's where, like I said a little bit earlier, it allows you to get those rates in an athletic fashion.
Yeah. And now if we're going to take the club, right, and obviously gonna be some hits as we were talking through this, but if I'm gonna put that club in your hands,
Okay.
and we're gonna feel some of these things, you're essentially feeling the same movement patterns as if you had that ball going, correct?
Yeah, 100%.
And in terms of the transition, like we were talking, really, and this is a transition video, because that transition into the downswing, getting the fall shift happening, and then going rotation from there, is happening like halfway back.
Oh, yeah.
It's happening a lot sooner.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're seeing, especially with long drive guys, but even some of the guys on tour, we're seeing the pressure kind of being maxed out at about waist high. Okay, from there it starts to kind of hook around, and almost, it is recentering, but it's almost gets back to, you know, arguably 50-50 at the top, if not even a little bit forward.
Yeah.
And you know, a good example, and you guys can throw up a screenshot of Jack Nicklaus at the top. I mean, Nicklaus does not look like he's over here. He looks almost left at the top, but at the same time, we know he didn't stay there the whole time. There was some movement in there.
And that's such a good point. And I think if people think about the shifting weight part of this or the shifting pressure part, it's like we want it to be a gradual to the right the whole entire time at the top pause, and then a gradual to the left, but it doesn't really work that way.
Nope.
It's a right early and pretty hard, and then it's a back to the left, right? And then there's even, we can talk about from there on forward in another video. But why don't we just do one, Josh, with that, with those feels? And I think those drills are going to be pretty straightforward. There's the sensation of the ball thrown away, and then back towards the wall in front. Yeah, beautiful. And as you guys could see here, as Josh is hitting, you can see the movement patterns. I think those drills are such a good starting point. I really do, not just saying that because you're standing here with me. I think those are really awesome ways to train that. So Josh, that was awesome, dude. If you guys have any questions, as always, about these concepts, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you liked the video, do us a favor, click that like button down below. Really helps us get our videos out to more people so we can keep making videos for you guys here for free. Click that subscribe button down below if you haven't already. If you do like these YouTube style videos, and this in particular, we're gonna put a recommended video on the screen here for another YouTube style video. If you would like more coaching, we'll put a card on the screen for cogornogolf.com. Would love to see you there.